And good morning, I'm Ira Flato. Today is Sunday the 19th of May and that means it's Science Friday. Oh, hang on, which podcast is this? What? Where am I? I don't know. I am confused. I'm always confused. Okay, before my confusion gets any worse. I acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Whadjuk Noongar peoples. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to Aboriginal elders and peoples from other communities who may be taking part in this live stream today. So, good morning everybody, and I hope you are having a fantastic Sunday morning / Saturday evening / 2 a.m. for whoever is in certain parts of Europe. For dementia to have kicked in. Oh, I have been demented. Dementor. Scott says, I didn't think John was old enough for the dementia to kick in yet. Yes, I have been demented for a very, very long time. So, I have Mitchell's Amazing Creation open. So good morning to Amanda. Andrew Ruthven. Amanda was almost first comment again, but she was pipped by Outside the Box last night. Good morning to Jack AF5IX. Gerald, Jordan, Lachlan is here. Lachlan, okay, that reminds me, I've got to mention something in just a moment. Mitch is here, and Crispian, Outside the Box. Peter Lawler, Scott Miller, Sergio L, Steve the Squirrel is here. Tabraze, The Lane, Treaty Trev, Wagon Loads, David Howe, Stephen W, and Austin and Gavin. Awesome. So the thing that seeing Lachlan's name in here reminded me of is that there is the opportunity, if you are Melbourne based, you're a maker of either the professional or non-professional description, and you would like a bit of space to work in that's outside of your house, there may be an opportunity to be here in the same building as me, well, kind of adjacent building just through a wall, because Lachlan has been clearing up the front of Factory 1, which is right next door to me. It's directly through the wall from beside me, and setting it up to be sort of like serviced offices. And the general idea is to make it available for rent to people who want to have serviced office space with access to tools. For example, being able to use his enormous laser cutter down the back part of the factory and various things like that. So if you are based in Melbourne and you would like to maybe you're doing like a mini maker business or something and you're at the stage where you want to move out of home, like I did a little while ago, moving into the space here, then get in touch. Either get in touch with Lachlan if you have his details, or you can message me and I will hook you up. So, yeah, Mitch says, the laser cutter is so big one could lie on it. Yes, it is big enough that you can fit an entire, well, in US terms, like 4x8 sheet or 2.4 meter by 1.2 meter sheet on it. It can't cut that size, but it can cut half of it. So you can cut really large things on it. So what you could do is put a full size sheet on it, cut part, move it, and cut the other part. So you can do very large things. Yeah, like the laser cutter is as big as a car, basically. Full body laser tattooing, or maybe tattoo removal, Scott. Austin said, does that include the immigration visa? Oh, Austin, yes, come to Melbourne, come and work with me, that'd be fun. That'd be really cool. We could do some interesting projects together. I could sponsor your work visa. I'm sure we could figure it out. So the text-to-speech thing should be up and running, just in case anybody does want to. Oh, it's Johnny! Johnny Bergdahl has got a membership for 19 months as a silver supporter. Thank you. Was the text-to-speech meant to pick that up? I don't know. It picks up, maybe it doesn't pick up membership things. Oh, that's very cool. Oh, Mike just waved. Mike Carden just waved from way up north. Oh, Birdie View is here too. I don't think I've seen Birdie View in the chat before. Okay, looks like a few people have joined since I did good mornings. Mitchell says just super chats.
Austins_creations said we are active on TTS.
Yes, we are active on TTS. Wagonload said, if you know where there is an unregistered underground bunker, sign me up.
Johnny Bergdahl has gifted 5 memberships.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks, Johnny.
Stephen W. has received a gifted membership from Johnny Bergdahl.
This is going to repeat a little bit.
David Howes has received a gifted membership from Johnny Bergdahl.
Good morning, Mark Laguda.
Russell Rainey has received a gifted membership from Johnny Bergdahl.
I'm going to let this play, just because it's cool. Jordan?
Call It Fun has received a gifted membership from Johnny Bergdahl.
And one more. Jordan.
Jordan Reese has received a gifted membership from Johnny Bergdahl.
Yes. Cool. Thanks, Johnny. Where are we? Yeah, so Austin said, I've always wanted to buy a decommissioned water dam. Decommissioned what? Okay. My first reaction to that is, yeah, of course, that would be obvious. That would be a really cool thing. But then I stopped and thought about it and thought, why would it be cool? What would you do with the decommissioned water dam? Are you talking about... No, I just don't get it. Are you talking about making use of the space inside the dam wall or the catchment area above it? Or, I don't know. Austin, please explain. Yeah, Crispian said he wants a puddle. Is that a puddle or a cuddle? Oh, Austin says, read Wagon Loads comment above. All right, going back up, scrolling back. Where is Wagon Loads? Yes, if you know where there is an unregistered underground bunker, sign me up. Yes, but a decommissioned water dam, that's not underground, is it? I don't know, I'm still confused. It just sounds like a cool thing to own though. It's like, I own a dam. Oh, all right. How many gigaliters is your dam? Things to put on a dating profile. Oh, Johnny says, I bought a house. Moving in August. Need to make it a super house. Of course. And
Amanda Thompson said, and don't forget to like and share John's stream on other platforms like I do each week.
Yes, thanks Amanda, I really appreciate that. So Jack's Tech said, trust me when I say living in an underground bunker is no fun. That, the way you phrase that, seems you are speaking from experience, which makes me very, very curious, Jack's Tech. I want to know about living in an underground bunker. Now there are other experiences that are... Okay. First squirrel of the day. Simulated Mars missions. Simulated Mars missions have interested me for a long time. So the general idea is to put people into an experience that is like going on a mission to Mars, including the isolation and the requirement for the physical environment that you live in within a very small space, not having contact with other people, communications delays, using the equipment that you would have to wear to go outside. For example, every time you leave the habitat, you have to put on a spacesuit, so you've got to go through that whole process. And oh, Jack Seck says, you have met me, I work in the defense industry. Yes. Yes. So defense would have a few underground bunkers. So
Scott Miller said Vault Tech are liars.
Yeah, they are liars. Oh, good morning, Matt. Matt has joined the chat. So the thing with simulated Mars missions is partly, there are a number of different reasons for doing them. It's basically a learning opportunity or a dry run in a safe environment to find out what works and what doesn't work, both from a procedural and technical point of view and equipment point of view, but also from a psychological point of view. How do people handle being stuck, for example, in an enclosed space with 5 other people for 1.5 years or 2 years? Do they go insane? Do they hate each other? How do they get along? And it seems to be, from what I've seen of the various Mars simulation missions that have gone on in the past, it very much does seem to depend on the individuals and how they relate to each other. In some cases, there was one, it wasn't a simulated Mars mission, but there was one that was on a boat, I think, where there were a group of people who were isolated on a boat for a certain period of time, and the leader of the expedition basically pissed everybody off. They ended up cutting him out of the group, and he was like alone on alone on this boat. Everybody else got along fine, and after the experience was over, they all stayed friends and in contact with each other and went their separate ways with no grudges. But other times people go through that sort of experience and they come out the other end hating the other people that they were stuck with and never wanting to see them again. So it's a bit like a super version of lockdown with a few people, but not being able to step outside the house without putting on a spacesuit. Andrew says, toured an underground bunker in Canada. It was awesome. Yeah. Jack's text said, this sounds like a Cody's Lab episode of Chicken Hole Base. Mitch says, similar challenges to crossing the Pacific on a boat. Everyone needs to be really good at getting along or the boat gets smaller and smaller. Yes. Yeah, it's a bit like a game of Fortnite. You know, you've got the circle of the storm that keeps closing in on you. And so at the start of the game, there's a long distance between people, and then you get compacted into a smaller and smaller space. As the boat goes along, as the journey goes along, the boat gets smaller and smaller. Amanda says, Sim Mars mission sounded like what it was like when I was a communications officer for SES in the field during the 94 bushfires. Wow. That would have been a pretty intense experience. Yeah. So my sister works for Parks Victoria and is regularly deployed to fires. She does management. I've mentioned this before. She does management of basically like logistics and setup and everything for the temporary bases that are used to operate from. So she'll go to a place where they've got a footy field or something and turn it into a town for a week, you know, with all of the stuff that's required. And my brother used to be, well, for a while he was a spotter in a helicopter, fire spotter. So his job would be flying over fires and directing ground crews. And then he became a fireground incident controller. I'm not quite sure what the actual title was, but it was something like that. The dude in charge of running the whole incident. David says, sounds like working in an office. Sometimes. But imagine if the office was 50 square meters and you could never leave 24 hours a day for 2 years. And there were 5 other people in that same office. Emmy said, did your sister set up the camp in Ballarat when we had the fires? I don't know. The recent ones, she was there a few weeks ago. She went off on a deployment for a while. Jacksec said it is instant controller. Okay, cool. Oh, Gerald says the worst isolation experiment was the Stanford prison experiment. Yeah, that was an interesting one. That is an interesting rabbit or squirrel to chase, but yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like chasing that specific squirrel. Sion is here. Good mood, Sion. Sion now has his CNC mill moving. I saw on a video a day or two ago. I saw that. So for those of you who don't know, Sion for a long time has wanted to get into CNC machining. And so he bought a kit for a mill and has assembled it over I'm not sure what the time frame, but it's been like during the last week. And there was one stream where he had to power it on, and he was evidently terrified of what was going to happen. So, one of those things, yes. When you're powering up something that can move by itself for the first time, it can be really nerve-wracking. Actually, the most nerve-wracking part, so if you power up something like a CNC machine or a pick and place machine or even a 3D printer or something like that, some device, or a water cannon, some device that can move by itself, particularly if it has a homing, this is the thing that I find is the scariest, is homing, because you don't know, well, you can check generally, but there's this feeling that you don't know if the limit switches are going to work. So if you've got a device that has an axis that moves, say, in the x-axis, and it moves towards the limit, it's going to touch a limit switch or break a beam or whatever, and then stop at that point. You have to be sure that the feedback loop to the controller is working, because if it doesn't, and it's still looking for the limit switch, it can drive straight through the end of the mechanism, and, you know, who knows what's going to happen. You could strip a gear or break something. So there's always that. There is always that little panic as you click the button to make it do its first homing cycle. And yes, there are things you can do to check that, of course, like activating the switches manually and making sure that the controller is acknowledging the feedback, which Sion did. And the other thing is, when I did that, the very first time I brought up Mickle Make It, my DIY pick and place machine, because I was building that I bought the mechanical chassis, but I didn't buy their controller or anything else. I used a third-party controller, and so there wasn't like a step-by-step guide, plug this all together and load this firmware and you're done. It's pre-configured. I had to do all the configuration myself, like including the motor tuning, the PID tuning, all of that sort of thing, figuring out the direction of the limits, the direction of motion. So the very first time that I got it to home one of the axes, what I did was, in the motion controller, I went in and turned the maximum speed way down. So instead of doing its usual sort of movement, it was just very slowly moving along until it contacted the limit switch. And I sat there with my hand on the big E-stop button, and that basically gave me enough time to be able to react if something really bad happened. So if I could tell if it had got to the limit switch and activated it and then not actually stopped, I would have time to hit the button before it, totally rammed into the end of the structure. So yes. Yeah, Sion says, yeah, I had done pre-flight checks, but still nervous as I built it, and I'm a hack. I expected I got it wrong. No, you've built lots of cool things, Sion, so I would have faith in you to do it the correct way around. Oh yeah, King Julian says, set torque limits if you can. Yes, that's right. Jack's Tech said, test the switches first. Yep. And that's what
Scott
Sion
Miller
did.
said, now imagine testing limit switches on a 500-ton press.
Yeah, that's a whole different level of, oh shit, it's gone wrong. Yeah, so on the video, Sion did show that he was checking it. He manually activated the limit switches just by pushing on it with his finger, and showed that the controller was recognizing the switch had been activated. But there are always things like, do you have your limit switches set on maximum or minimum, and is it going to move in the correct direction? Do the soft limits work? In the configuration, once it is homed, has it reset at 0 point, so the soft limit is then the correct offset from the far end if you've only got limit switches on one end of each axis? Yeah. Wagon Load says if you press the limit switch before it got to the end, it would stop early. Yes, that's right. So what you do is you tell it to home, so it's moving towards the limit switch, and then you press it with your finger, and then it should stop at that point, so that you can test it that it's done it before it's even got to the end. Yeah, so there are all these things you can do, but it still is nerve-wracking. Okay, so going back to that living in a bunker thing, Mitch said minimum time home and transfer orbit to Mars is 9 months. Yeah, so a trip to Mars is not going to be a quick thing. If you then home correctly afterwards. Yes. All right. Where are we today? It isn't every day that you get to play with a GigaPress. Sion says, or you don't stick your finger near the limits when it's moving. Yeah. No, I'm stretching my memory back to what I did. Because this was, when did I start building Mick or Make It? Must have been 9 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. I think what I did with that was, as well as setting the speed way, way down. So I set the speed way down, I got it homing so it was moving towards the limit, and then I activated the limit manually. But it was moving very slowly, so there was plenty of time to do something about it. Speaking of which, I really should do something about wiring up safety interlocks on the KO pick and place machines. Tradies here, good morning. Here's one to leave with the audience to answer. I want to hear what people would say. Question from Mitch: if you were offered a one-way trip to Mars, would you take it? Many of our forebears came to Australia on that basis. Discuss. David says safety interlocks just get in the way and make things more complicated. Yes, they do, but the KOs are powerful enough and scary enough that I could very easily lose a finger or damage a hand or something if it moved unexpectedly. And that could happen. It is surprisingly frequent that I stick my hands and or head inside the pick and place machine. Happens all the time, just in the normal day-to-day course of using it. For various reasons. You might wonder why I would do that. No, I'm not just playing chicken with a very fast robot. The pick and place machine moves faster than I do. So if it did a rapid and I was in there, I would not be able to react fast enough to get out of its way. Yes, safety interlocks save your fingers, says Tradie. Yes. There have been, and the thing is that I've kind of become complacent about it. The machine will be in there, moving, like placing parts, and maybe something has happened, like one of the feeders, say a feeder with switches in it, which are physically kind of large and, jaggy. They've got surface mount pads sticking off them and a thing sticking up. Sometimes they can go wrong. Like they can end up being bounced in at an angle and jamming, and then the feeder isn't working properly. Things go wrong. So sometimes the machine will be running and I'll see that the feeder has jammed and there's something out of place. So I'll open the cover and I'll stick my hand in to flick the thing out of the way while the machine is zipping around right near me. And if it happens to zip to the wrong feeder at the wrong time, I would be in a very, very bad situation. Mike says, being inside the radome of a live satellite dish is one of those the big robot wants to kill me experiences. Yeah. Wagon Load says, if you put the limit switch on the moving part, it would be the first thing to make contact. That is very true. Yes. That doesn't necessarily solve the problem if the issue is configuration, but yes, potentially. I don't think it actually really matters whether it's on the moving part or the non-moving part, as long as mechanically it is the first thing to make contact. And if you put it on the non-moving part, typically you have less wiring involved, because if you put it on the moving part, the cable to the limit switch has to pass through the cable chain or the drag chain.
Lola said yay.
Yay! Yeah, moving a switch would need a non-moving thing to hit.
See my comment.
Okay, Mitchell, where is Mitchell's comment? Mitchell going back. Okay. Mitchell says, rather than interlock the door, use IR beams on the inside along the front and top so you can open the cover without it stopping, but if you put your head or fingers in, it will stop. Yes. So a curtain is the way, what, blah, blah, blah. A curtain, an IR curtain is the way those things are done. Peter? Nope.
Peter Lawler said just joined. Have we had Steve and Steph proof of life?
Nope. You're gonna have to live in anticipation or trepidation for a while. Oh, outside the box says, what is the noise in the background? It sounds interesting. That noise in the background is my brain. It's the 3D printer. You can actually, if I move, you might be able to see it moving. Can you see it moving? Oh, just there. You see that black thing, that part just there? It's doing a small movements right now. But if we wait a bit, if it does a traverse over to another part of the print, it's probably doing like backwards and forwards on a layer in line with the direction that we are looking at it right now. But sometime soon we should see it moving. Maybe. Actually, I wonder if printer one. I wonder if the
Amanda
camera is
Thompson
working.
Said, what are you printing?
Oh yeah, here we go. This. So there you can see it moving. This is the live feed from Octoprint. I am printing feeders for the pick and place machine, and this is a 9-hour print, and it has many parts on it. Most of the print bed is full. I think it's got about 17 parts in this one batch. Some of them are physically quite big because it does the two covers, like the two main bodies, well, the main body plus the cover for the feeder, and then it's got a whole lot of other smaller mechanical parts that go in it as well. So it's a, well, yeah, oh, you can see from the preview there in, I don't think I can enlarge that, but it has many parts being printed. Trady says, does that mean a 9-hour stream today? Maybe. Alan, thanks for coming along. Yes, Emmy got it. Yeah, Emmy figured out that it was a 3D printer. Yeah, so this particular, what it's printing right now is Panda Placer. Panda Placer. You can see my search history there. It's one of these. It's the auto feeder. I won't bother going into that. Well, actually, there are photos.
Mitchell said, lol, when you end the stream, don't end it. Just switch to the 3D printer and leave it streaming, lol.
Yeah, I could do that. If you just search for bamboo feeder, you just get random bird. You get all sorts of things made out of bamboo. Like dog feeder bowl holders made out of bamboo and bird feeders made out of bamboo. Bamboo feeder, I'm going to find a diagram. Where is it? I'm doing this off stream because I've got to go through a whole series of things on the file system. Where are we? Bamboo feeder. Does this oh no, that's not the right one. V1.1, 1.1, all parts, no. Where are we? Magazine tray holder, all this. Yeah. Here are some of the diagrams that are used as the explanation of how to put it together. So this is all the important parts of it. Where is another picture? I think there's a picture here of it. Oh no, that's just part of the locking mechanism. It's not that interesting. It's a little cam lock thing. That's just a photo of this part down here, which locks it onto the onto the mounting rail. So it uses two mounting rails. This rail up here on the right is the front rail on the base plate of the pick and place machine, and this one is a rail. So this is 2020 extrusion. This is for mounting the feeders, and the mounting system for them, I like it.
Cheese.
Yeah, I like it. So what happens is that you can see here, the old version of the bamboo feeder used to have a 20mm slot right here. So what you would do is slide the bamboo feeder down onto the 2020 extrusion and it would just sort of mechanically sit in place. But the way this works now is the slot is wider than the extrusion and there is a little rib sticking in here. So what you do is drop the feeder into place and then slide it forward. And this rib slides into the extrusion and latches it from this face. And over at the other end of the feeder, there is an alignment guide, a 3D printed alignment guide that goes onto this end. So this L-shaped piece of thingy here bolts onto the extrusion. This is not part of the feeder. This is a mounting guide that sits permanently in front of the feeder, and it provides a location for the front of it. And you can't see from this cross section, but there is like a diamond shaped hole in the front of the feeder and a diamond shaped protrusion coming out of the mounting bar so that it locks it into place. So it goes into the exact same location every time. So the idea is to replace a feeder. Oh, and electrically, what you can't see here is the other part that goes into this. So this is a connection. It's there is a servo inside the feeder right there, and the cable from the servo is captive in the 3D print. So there is a row of pin sockets, like a 1x3 pin socket mounted on the front here, and then there is a PCB that goes basically, the PCB is approximately there where my highlight is. That's the dimensions of the PCB. It's bolted onto the bottom of this extrusion with bolts that go through it and spacers, and then there are pin headers mounted on the PCB that stick in here, and I think you can see where this is going. So to put the feeder in place, you drop it onto the mounting rail and slide it forward, and by sliding it forward it engages it with the front plate. It engages this little bit that sticks into the extrusion, and it engages the electrical connections, and then you twist the cam on this locker arm and it can't come back out again. And the goal with this is to have feeders that you can drop into place and push forward, and that's it, you're done. They're in a repeatable position, so you can take a feeder out, reload it, stick it back in without having to recalibrate, and all of the electrical connections are taken care of by that as well. You don't have to have flying leads plugged in or anything silly like that. So pretty cool, pretty cool. I have printed a bunch of the version 1.0 of this feeder, which is the previous version. It doesn't have the captive connection down here, it doesn't have the front alignment plate, and it doesn't have the locking system in here. And so I am just now printing the version 1.1, which is what you see here, so that, and this is all the parts for it, so that I can do some tests with it and see what this is like. Looks like a Nerf gun.
Says, looks like a Nerf gun long.
Yeah, it does. Yes. Oh, it looks like I've been missing a whole bunch of stuff in the chat while I've been ranting about this feeder. Now, this is a situation where the simple solution... Okay, so part of the reason for this, there are two reasons that I am doing this. A little while ago, so I have a whole bunch of Yamaha CL pneumatic feeders. Yamaha, oh, I can't speak. Yamaha CL, oh look, you can see me talking about, there's a Google Groups thing, no, I'm not going to go into that. Yamaha CL feeder. I have a whole bunch of these. These are pneumatic feeders, and they've been the industry standard for many years, but in the last couple of years they have been made obsolete. Chinese factories are pretty much all moving away from the pneumatic CL feeders, and electric feeders are the way to go these days. Everybody's just going electric. It's kind of weird. It's one of those things where, oh, that's interesting. It's one of those things where, like, an industry goes through a transition very, very rapidly. Probably 2 years ago, if you walked into a random Chinese assembler, like a PCB assembly factory, they would have hundreds and hundreds of these Yamaha CL pneumatic feeders, and like carts full of them, loaded with parts. But now they're all gone. They're all, yeah, the industry has gone to electric feeders. And there are electric feeders that drop. So there is an electric version of the CL feeder, and mechanically it is compatible. So the idea is that if you've got infrastructure, you've got an assembly line that has pick and place machines that have pneumatic feeders, you can retrofit electric feeders to them. Now, electric feeders have been around for a long time. They've been, I'm not saying electric feeders are new. They have, they've been around for years. There's been a bit of a price premium for them. So if you bought a pneumatic feeder, it would be a third the price of an electric feeder. But so people would use electric feeders, but they tended to be more of the mid to high end installations, or places where you want it to be as fast and reliable, etc., as possible. But it reached a tipping point where all of a sudden everybody just started going for electric feeders. Anyway, what am I saying? I don't know, that's right. So you can buy Yamaha CL electric feeder like this. You can see it's got a cable coming off it. There's no pneumatic mechanism in here. There's a motor in here. So what you do is drop this onto the same manifold as a pneumatic feeder, and then you have a flying lead that you plug into a controller, and the electric drive is used instead of the pneumatic drive. So what you can do is retrofit, and I could do that. So I could get electric feeders, or I could just buy more pneumatic feeders. The problem is, firstly, price, because I just don't have the cash to be able to buy a bunch of feeders. and secondly, space. So these feeders end up being fairly wide. The standard, like the mounting blocks that they go onto, the manifold with the compressed air is, hang on, where are we? Oh yeah, look, there's a manifold. So that is a Yamaha CL manifold with compressed air, and it's got a whole bunch of solenoids under it so it can apply compressed air to any of the feeders. These have a fixed mounting spacing, and so the pitch of the feeders dictates how many you can fit into a machine. And by going to these feeders, I can dramatically increase the number of feeders that I can fit in the machine. It's the total width of these feeders is 12 millimeters. Like the whole feeder is 12 millimeters wide. And the pitch on the Panda Placer, which is the pick and place machine these are designed for, they are mounted on 12.5 millimeter pitch. And the 0.5 millimeter is just to allow for little inconsistencies, like slight warpage and the fact that things aren't perfect. If you try to make everything perfect, you'll end up with them jamming and not fitting properly. So 12.5 millimeter pitch means that I can fit, effectively it increases the number of parts I can put in the machine by about 50% compared to using regular CL feeders. So I can go from, how many do I have currently? 40, so it's 10, there's 20 on there. I think I've got 44. Yeah, I think I've got around 44 feeder mounts. I can't actually remember. 44 or 48 mounting locations on the manifolds, including both the front and back of the machines. And it'll take me to like 60 or 65 feeders that I can fit on each machine by going narrower. Alan asked, is it on a 2020 rail? Yes, it is. That's right. That is 2020 extrusion that you can see in that cross section. All right, I'm going to scroll back. Someone was talking about printers. Wagon Load says, I don't have a 3D printer, but I would guess if each print job was all the same height parts, it would be most time efficient. Yep. I don't know. Most time efficient. Yeah. Well, with this particular job, it's a mix of some quite flat parts. Like you can see, for example, see in the front here, there is that disc with the holes in it that's been printed. That is a cover that goes onto the cover tape peeler mechanism. And that whole part, that's finished printing now. It's only like a few layers high. It's just a thin disc. So the machine doesn't have to go back and do any more on that. It's now printing other parts of it. And you can see that a lot of the parts here have like a body and then parts of the mechanism sticking up. So once it's printed the large flat area, it's then only doing the features. Where are we at? We're on layer 1 of 53. Okay, so it does have more layers to do on that. So we're currently on layer 1 of 53. So what will happen is that it will take a long time. Like it'll take the first few hours to get through, well here you can see it saying print time of 6 hours 41 minutes. That's running at 100% speed. I am currently running it at 69% speed, I think, because running the first few layers really slow helps with PETG adhesion on the bed and with thermal stability. So yeah, I found that I get dramatically better results if I run the first few layers at least, typically the first 3 layers, at a reduced speed, and it can speed up after that. But yeah, it means there's less likelihood of corners lifting and small parts or small features having problems. where was I? Oh yeah, so that's right. So what'll happen is that the first few layers, say like getting up to layer, I don't know, like 10 or something, will take the first third of the time, like the first couple of hours of print time just to get through the first few layers. And after that, it gets faster and faster because there is less on each of the subsequent layers to print until it's just doing features on some of the high parts. And the last few layers, it rips through in a matter of minutes. So, yeah. Austin says, P&P and TIG welder are definitely the two next machines for me to buy. Okay. P&P. So you're going to go down the painful rabbit hole, Austin. But a welder, yes. So Lachlan has a TIG welder here, and so my friend Steve has lent me his MIG welder, but I need to get a bottle of gas for it so I can start using it. Austin says, also I really want a multi-material printer. Yeah, I think...
Even Lola said my spoon is too big.
Your spoon is too big? Want a multi-material printer. Right, yeah. I'm... Something like an X1 Carbon is definitely...
Imogen Ann said I am a banana.
This is random. Is definitely very high on my equipment list, partly because of speed. Well, a few reasons. One is multi-material, another is speed. Things like this, like you can see that this is going to take essentially most of a day to run this print job. If I want to print 20 of these feeders, it's going to take me a few weeks. Just for the print job will take a few weeks. And that's with the printer busy doing this and nothing else. But also there are some jobs, like there is one client project at the moment where I need to do some really large 3D prints of enclosures, which ultimately will be injection molded, but they are physically too big to go on my printer. So there's an enclosure with, looking around for a ruler. Yeah, it's something like 340 millimeters wide. Like this enclosure is physically quite big. It's got to enclose a battery pack, a control board, a charge, like a battery management system with charge balancing, and there's, what else is there? Oh, some other stuff. Anyway, there's a whole lot of stuff that has to go inside this very large enclosure. The enclosure ultimately is going to be probably smaller than that once we get all of the design finalized, and it will be injection molded once it goes to production quantities. But there is this transition coming up very soon. We've got 2 units of this particular thing that have just gone out into the field for field trial. So I'm not going to talk about the specifics of what this client project is, but just in general terms, so what I did was I 3D printed the enclosure, and weatherproofing is a big issue for this particular project. I 3D printed the enclosure in multiple parts on my Prusa 3D printer, and then glued them together. So there is a base that's printed in 2 parts, and then there's a cover that's printed in 2 parts, and it takes ages to print. So just printing one of them, like enough to build one of these units, it can be a couple of days of messing around, most of which is not my time, of course. It's just the printer sitting there doing it. But printer speed is...
Peter Lawler said, I am the Queen of France.
Congratulations, Your Highness, Peter, Queen of France. So speed is a thing. With this particular project where we currently have the 2 units in the field. Once we get beyond this point and we've done a bit more field testing, I'm going to need to produce more units reasonably quickly, and it's going to fall into that difficult band where we might want like 20 of them or 40 of them, and they are physically big, I can 3D print them, but if it takes days to print each one, that is going to be a problem. And yeah, it would take too long and be too much of a commitment to the design and be too expensive to injection mold them. So we won't be at the volume yet where injection molding is justified. Oh, I'm hearing strange sounds coming out of the 3D printer. I pay on the early stages. Oh, I think I can see some bad artifact as well. Hang on, I'm going to switch to this and go and have a look, which means I'm going to be going out of focus. I just heard a sort of crackling noise.
Said I have the bamboo X1 and find it great. I still haven't pushed it to its limits yet.
Yeah, it looks like there is perhaps a little dag of plastic attached, which the nozzle was brushing against, and it was making that sort of cracking noise as it went past it. So this, I may have to abandon this print and start it again, but we will see. This is the danger of running a print with so many parts in one job. If one of them has a fault, has some little thing where it doesn't adhere properly, you've basically got to scrap the whole job and start over again, which is very frustrating. I had to do that yesterday when I was printing one of these. But so I'm just going to be paying attention to it. I'm going to be listening to the machine, and if I hear it doing strange things, I may have to cancel it. What? Oh, Mitch says, if you want to print 20, get JLC or PCB way to print it. Yeah, that's true. And then get them shipped over. I wonder how much it would cost to do that and how long it would take compared to printing it myself. So many people, I know, I have recommended the X, basically everybody that has come to me in the last 6 months and said, I'm thinking of getting a 3D printer, what should I get? I have said, get an X1 Carbon. Every person that I've said that to has bought one, and every person that has bought one has said it's the greatest thing ever. So, yeah, so like I've talked about T-Rex water trucks, for example, the water cannon project that I often talk about on the stream. Some months ago, Simon from T-Rex asked me about 3D printers because he was using a Prusa. He bought a Prusa Mark III a few years ago on my recommendation at the time, and that did a good job. He was using it, so he prints enclosures and things that, so they're not just like tests. Because of the low volume that is done, he actually 3D prints enclosures that go into commercial products, and it did the job fine. But it got to the point where he needed more throughput and was thinking about buying a second Prusa, and I said, no, get an X1 Carbon instead. That'll do the job of 2 Prusas. And he got one and loves it. It's yeah, it's really, really good. And a couple of other people have also bought X1s. One of those things that it just seems to be a bit of a game changer. It's such a level above most of the other consumer 3D printers around at the moment. Austin says, also plan to try some carbon fiber PETG on a project. Yep. Alan said, in the last week, my 2 Ender 3 have printed 2 kilograms of filament. You're putting a bit through them. Where is it?
Outside the box said, what sort of dollars do they fetch?
In Australian dollary dues, they are about $2,200 dollary dues, or Kanga bucks. David said, well, my Bamboo Labs P1S is working behind my left shoulder. Yeah, so the P1S is another good option. But I think I would go for the X1 just for the nice touchscreen and all of the other good things. Wagon Load said your servo feeder spacing is limited to the width of the servo. Partly. Yes, the servo, so we're talking about the feeder here. Hang on, I'm going to grab one. Yes, I'm going to leave you looking at that, and I'm going to grab some feeder stuff to show you, and then get back to the other things. I want to work on building something. Yeah, before starting the stream today, what I had in mind was to say, let's work on something. And the natural temptation, of course, is let's start a new project. But no, error, too many projects. So I, hang on, switch to overhead. Oh, shove the heater out of the way. So this is my bag of stuff for the, there's a version 1 feeder, all complete. And there are bags of parts, more feeders complete, more parts, more feeders down under here. So these are all version 1.0 feeders. So looking at it oriented the same way as the other diagram, you can see it just sits down onto the 2020 extrusion. The new one, the slot is longer, it's got the mounting thing there, so you slot it down and then slide it forward. So yes, it is basically, the feeder is just slightly thicker than the servo. It is almost the thickness of the servo. But yeah, so the actual body is 12 millimeters. And it's heading down towards the limit of the tape and the reel, because the tape is 8 millimeters wide. So to make you can't, obviously...
Outside the box says, tell it outside the box.
Tell outside the box. Okay, what did outside the box say? I want to make suspension bushes with a 3D printer. Are the softer materials available and still robust while being pliable? Yes. TPU is, I actually wouldn't know about suspension bushes, but yeah, I've printed in TPU and it's actually really cool. You can print rubber things. Right. So the tape, hang on, there was one here with tape in it. Here we go. This one, it's got a little piece of tape in it. You can see that the width of the tape is 8 millimeters, and obviously that is a lower limit on how wide any of this can be. And then you need structure on both sides of the tape because it has to be contained. So if you allow 2 millimeters on each side of the tape for the structure, then you have a minimum limit of 12 millimeters.
Said rubber goods for the weekend?
No, Peter. So basically 12 millimeters is the lower bound of how wide a feeder can be. You can see this is reading out at 12.06, 12.07 millimeters, just because of 12.01. Depends how hard I squeeze the the calipers and which part of the feeder I put it on. But it's nominally a 12 millimeter wide feeder, which is the width of the tape plus 2 millimeters on each side for the structure. So 12 millimeters. It's essentially approaching theoretically the thinnest you could possibly make a feeder for tape. If you use a bulk feeder that just uses loose parts, then you don't have that limitation. But if you are dealing with 8 millimeter wide tape, a 12 millimeter wide feeder is approaching the physical limits of what you could do. You could potentially make it 10 millimeters wide if you had 1 millimeter on each side for the mechanical structure, but you're really getting into watchmaker territory at that point, how you get the mechanism to work within that physical limitation. So 12 millimeters per part, per feeder, that is the theoretical, it's hit the limit there. We've hit the lower boundary of what can be done. Possibly the only way to make it even tighter would be to make a multi-feeder where you had multiple tape let's say like a triple feeder with three reels or 3 tapes all side by side. But you've also got to allow for the size of the reel, because remember that in line with each of these is a reel of parts, and the reels have the tape plus the structure on each side. So the reels are about 12 millimeters wide as well. And if you stack them all side by side with no gap between them, they are still going to take up 12 millimeters per reel. So we've really hit the limit there. We're at the bottom limit of the width of a feeder. There's no, yeah, it's not just diminishing returns. You've kind of hit a hard limit. Yeah, so that's the intake side of the feeder. The tape comes up through here, runs through the drive mechanism, runs past the pickup location, which is just here. There's a little anti-bounce spring here, and the tape is then ejected out the bottom. So the main tape comes out the bottom. The cover tape, which isn't on this at the moment, this is just a bit of old bare offcut. The cover tape would come back from here, comes up over the top and onto this reel, this take-up reel. And this has a ratchet. It ratchets forward like that. One click for each advancement. Actually, that doesn't turn. The cover doesn't turn. The back part, oh yeah, that screw needs to be done a bit tighter. The back part turns, and there is a ratchet in there. So this little hook moves backwards and forwards, and it pulls the cover tape peeler mechanism, and it winds up on this spool here. So as the tape is being used up,
if you stagger the feeders, you might squeeze a few more in.
Staggered feeders, yes. I've seen that idea proposed. It ends up adding a lot of depth this way. So you have one feeder here, and then you have another feeder offset slightly, like back behind it, and then another one forward, so like zigzagging them. Yeah, in order to do that effectively, the reels are, what, I can't remember, 180 millimeters diameter, 200 millimeters diameter. So they need to be offset by their entire size, and which means you, instead of the single reel depth, you've got double reel depth. So you end up becoming very deep in this direction by going for that. I've seen people post diagrams, like drawings of theoretical. I don't think I've ever seen one in reality, but on the Open P&P list, I've seen people theorizing about how to do that. And the geometry is problematic, basically, trying to figure out a way to make that work. So, what have I been missing? Where are we? Oh, Wagon Load says, can't you use aluminium side panels to get thinner? Potentially. So I could use something like 0.8 millimeter aluminium on each side, or what some people have done is make one side panel and then have everything else attached to that side panel. Then you have fixing issues, because to fix something to that side panel, you need a countersunk screw, and if the panel is very thin, then the countersinking, it doesn't leave you very much to bite into. And yes. Alan Madsen said, are they made for wider tape too? Yes, so far what I've just been showing is 8 millimeter tape, but I also need 12 millimeter, 16 millimeter, 20, 24 millimeter and bigger as well. Yes. Yeah, Stephen said for something like ESP32 modules. Yeah, the ESP32 like Vroom modules on tape are ridiculously wide. I have some, let's see, I don't have them in a feeder because I think I need a forklift to move the feeder. I've seen photos of feeders for these things, but I'll just show you some examples of wide parts. Oh yeah, these ones are pretty crazy. I'm going to show you some examples of wide parts on tape. I've got these H4 modules that are on ridiculously wide tape. Let's go back to here. Okay, so what's this one? Oh, bridge rectifiers. I just went in and grabbed out some random large tapes that were sitting on the bench in there. So this is 24mm tape. These are bridge rectifiers on large tape. So for comparison, that is standard 8mm tape. This is 24mm tape. So 24mm is pretty common for larger things. What's this one? Fewett. This is piezo modules. This looks like 24 as well. Yeah, that's 24mm tape as well. These are piezo modules for making noise. Those ones, as you can see, came from LCSC. All right. But check this out. This one is kind of crazy. So this is H4 modules, H4 minis. These are ESP32, no, H2 modules. Sorry, H2 modules. But look at the tape it's on. And these are minis, so that is 44mm tape. Yeah, a feeder to handle this would just be monstrous. And once again, for comparison, there is standard 8mm tape versus the 44mm for the ESP32 H2 minis. So what I'm trying to solve here is the most common case. If I can optimize for because the vast majority of parts are on 8mm tape, whether you're dealing with 0603 or 0402, 0201, 0805, 1206 parts. Like, I don't use those larger ones, obviously, but well, actually I do for some special cases for high current. Just sticking that there, so there's something on the screen. For high current parts, I do sometimes use larger. Like if I need a 1 watt surface mount resistor, then you can't get it in 0603 or 0402. They only take tiny little fractions of a watt. So, and sometimes you do need those high power resistors, and things like current shunts, current shunts when you're doing current sensing. Some of those resistors are huge because they may need to be able to pass 20 amps or something through them, and they're made to high precision, like 0.002 of an ohm with 0.1% accuracy, you know, that sort of thing. And those resistors can be physically really big. But apart from those special cases, just making up numbers, like 80%, 85% of the parts that I put down would fit on an 8mm tape. And optimizing the most common use case then is the biggest win. It's the low-hanging fruit. If I can optimize for the 8mm tape, then the oddball ones that need huge feeders can, yeah, there's just more room on the machine to fit them in. Let's see. 24mm is a multiple of 8, which makes sense. Yep. Looks like I have been missing more comments. Where are we? Where are we? Oh, Tech Nebulous. I don't think I said hello to you yet. I was doing the conversion wrong. Right. Tabraze asked, can you use one side panel and then close the other side with the side panel from the next feeder? It would cause problems for disassembly, but most of the time you shouldn't change reels if using. Don't know. Oh, if using standard parts and consolidated BOMs. Yeah, the majority of the parts stay on the machine and never change. Oh, and Gerald said the Raspberry Pi Pico come on reel, 77 millimeters wide. Yeah, I've got some of those. Hang on, Pico. Raspberry Pi, where would that be? I've got some Picos on... I'm just wondering where I would have put them. I got some Picos. Like I bought some Raspberry Pi Picos.
Time to dial it up to 11 and head to work. Don't forget to dislike and unsubscribe, folks.
Peter, you're going to work. Yeah. Well, have a good day at work. Where? What? Oh, I know. It would be on the Test-O-Matic project, which is... Where is the plastic box for the Test-O-Matic? I thought it was right here. I had it. Like... recently. Where is the Test-O-Matic board? Yeah, those... I ordered some RP 2040s and they came on cut pieces of... Oh, there it is. Yeah. Oh, these are nuts. Okay. Yes. They came on cut pieces of tape. Back to here. So this is my Test-O-Matic project box. Ooh. Look at this. RP 2040s. And this is the width of the tape. The tape is not that wide. The tape is that wide. Crazy. So I would love to see the feeder that feeds these. Oh, it's actually a bit less. It's 72 millimeter tape on this one. Yeah, 72 millimeter. And it's got ratchets on both sides because the tape is so wide that feeding it from one side might cause jams. It needs to be fed from both sides. Anyway, feels like I've talked about this subject enough. It's probably exceeded everybody's interest level significantly. Panda Placer, yeah. Oh, do you have a link to the feeder? Asked Alan. And Austin has very nicely answered that question. Thank you, Austin. So there are links to the Panda Placer now that Austin has posted. And David said, well, if you run out of space on your P&P machine, just use the other two. Yeah, yeah. So I'm just mentally going over whether I want to go into this because I don't know. The stuff I talk about, I've had quite a few people say over the last few months expressing things along the lines of, oh, it's not a home automation channel anymore, it's about electronics manufacturing. And so, yeah, kind of, not out of intention, it's just I talk about the things that interest me or that I'm doing at the time. And over the last 2 years in particular, as I've been moving towards getting the Super Lab all set up and doing all of this manufacturing, that has been where my brain has been more than the automation side of things, particularly since I do not have a house at the moment. So my living situation is essentially staying in someone's spare room and has been for quite a while now. So I'm not in a situation where I can do anything with house modifications or home automation or anything like that. So anyway, all of that. How long do we have?
System notification. 45 minutes remaining.
Okay, I gotta take a drink. Okay, that's better. I need a way to be able to quickly mute my own microphone and not mute, no, okay, sorry. My brain was chasing a squirrel then about audio routing and getting the audio from the computer into the stream so that sound can be playing and my microphone can be muted. But that is a whole extra squirrel to chase. Yes. Austin said, yeah. All right. There are a few comments there that I do want to follow up on, but before I do, yes, where was I going? Anyway, that's right. So my point was, I've been spending a lot of time talking about the lab itself, my manufacturing stuff, the equipment, pick and place, even things like now, doing this, which way? That way. Doing the printing of feeders. For many people, this is just not interesting. And I suspect that most of you aren't into electronics manufacturing or assembly. I mean, obviously there are some, but, and there are a few, I know there are a few people here who have pick and place machines and are more into it than I am. But that would be a small percentage of the people who watch my channel. So, are these the sorts of things I should be talking about? I don't know. But then I come back to, well, it's my channel. I'm just talking about the things that interest me, and if this is what interests me at this stage in my life, then that's what I'm going to talk about. Right, so there was, where was it? I think it was Crispian earlier, so outside the box, who said, why do they, there it is, yes, I found it. Why would they mount it that way? And Scott said, hard to put on a reel the other way, and Stephen said, bend radius. Yes, that's exactly it. So what we're talking about here is these RP2040s on a reel. So the question is, why would the reel be going in that direction instead of doing it in that direction? And the answer is, this tape has to be rolled up on a reel. And if you have them mounted like this, the tape can wrap around the reel in this direction. But if you have them like this, you can't, the length of each of the segments is very long. So the bend radius becomes really large and you end up with a huge reel. Doing it like this, at least it can bend more tightly, and then the reel doesn't have to be so absurdly large. Even so, the reels are big. They're like, whoa, big. But yes, bend radius is exactly the answer there. Stephen hit it in one. Austin asked, how do you pick which items you're replacing first? Do you do small passives first? I let OpenPNP figure that out. It does it all by itself. There's there are calculations that can be done, and the more advanced software. So once you start getting into path planning optimization in pick and place software, it can become very, very complicated, because what you have to think about is, imagine you are picking up a little resistor, moving it over a PCB and putting it back down. You have to allow for when you raise the resistor and move it, the clearance is not from the nozzle tip, it is from the bottom of the part that you've picked up. So you have to allow clearance from the bottom of the part. So the software has to know how thick the part is to know how much clearance it's got above the board, and then it has to know the thickness of the parts that it has already placed on the board to know where their top is, so that it can raise it enough to clear the parts as it's moving to its destination. The simplistic approach to that is simply to raise to maximum Z height every time, and then you should have enough clearance. But in terms of order, there is an optimization issue that you have to deal with for things like nozzle changes, because a nozzle change is slow compared to picking and placing parts. You don't want to be changing nozzles constantly. So the usual process, and also you want to minimize the path. So if you, for example, are picking up from feeders that are close to each other, that is faster than picking up from feeders that are on, like, some feeders from the front of the machine, some feeders from the back of the machine, and then taking everything to the camera for orientation and then taking it to its destination. It's actually a really complicated problem. There are many factors involved. You have to allow for the nozzle tip that is required. Ideally, you want to have every nozzle loaded on every movement, on every placement cycle. You want the minimum travel distance so that there is less transit time. And you also want to raise it as little as possible to clear objects that are already in the way. So the usual way to do that is to do it in the order of part height, starting with the lowest parts first. So put down all of the thinnest parts that use one nozzle. So in the pick and place software, if it could see, for example, that all of the thinnest parts that I have are 0603 parts, and they are, say, 0.8 of a millimeter thick. So, and they need a certain nozzle size. So load the nozzles. If you've got, say, a four nozzle machine, then load 4 nozzles that'll pick up 0603 parts, and then you put down all of the 0603s as fast as possible without any nozzle changes. And then you go for the next size up, which might be SOT23s, for example, like transistors that are more than 0.8 millimeter. I can't remember, but they're more like 1.2 millimeters thick. So it may or may not require a nozzle change, but then you do the next size up parts, and then you might need a nozzle change to go for something like capacitors or ICs, which could be thicker as well. So basically you build it up from the bottom level, putting down the smallest, thinnest parts and working up to the larger parts and connectors and other odds and ends. I think that's generally the model that's used, because that way you can minimize the Z retraction for a flyover of existing parts. So that's, yeah, that is a whole, optimizing pick and place is a whole big complicated thing. And then there are other things you can do, like flying cameras, where you put, instead of having the alignment camera in a fixed location on the bed, have the alignment camera at an angle on the flying head itself, with something like a mirror that flicks underneath with a solenoid, so that it can do the alignment while it's in transit. Another strategy that was demonstrated on the OpenPNP mailing list about a week ago was doing in-motion alignment, which is really impressive. It's a fixed camera, and what this person did was, this was on a homemade pick and place machine with software they wrote themselves. So this wasn't using OpenPNP, this was using an alignment program they wrote. And what it did was run 4 nozzles across the camera at full speed with no pause. It didn't adjust the Z height or anything, so it didn't like bring a part over the camera and then lower it to the focus location, take a photo, raise it, and then move to the next one. It basically just ran the head straight across the camera, and while it was in motion, took the photos. Now you can't do this with a rolling shutter type thing because you'll get weird things happening. It has to be a global shutter where it takes a snapshot photo as the part is moving over it, and by taking it at the exact right moment and then doing the alignment in software, you can figure out the whether the part is twisted or offset or whatever, and apply that correction by the time the nozzle has reached its destination, which might be like 100 milliseconds later, 150 milliseconds later. So yeah, it's really, really impressive. And this particular system was doing on-the-fly imaging of 4 nozzles at full speed as it flew past the camera. Really cool. Very, very cool. Russell says, I enjoy your show. Thank you. Gerald42 says, I always learn something when I watch your channel, John. Oh, thank you. Justin C says, you do exactly what you want to do. Jack Stack said, it's my lab, I'll rant about PNPs if I want to. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can open PNP mailing list. I just want to see if I can find this because, no, not there. Open PNP. Sorry, Google Groups. There we go. I'm looking for the Google group for OpenPNP, and I'll see if I can find this. There was actually a video of this thing. Head drift, part placement. When was it? Oh, if anybody wants to buy a light placer, someone in Melbourne has one for sale. Camera not waiting for the nozzle to arrive to position when using bottom vision. Trying to remember, where was it? Oversized cam view. Using Bezier camera for bottom vision. Maybe this was it. To improve my, no, not that one. I can't remember which thread this was in. It might have been, I really want to find this because the video was really impressive. Might have been this one. Not waiting for the part to arrive. No. No. Not that one. No. Or maybe it was longer ago. My sense of time is very screwed up. It could well be that this was week. Oh, here we go. Flyby vision. Flyby vision. This is really cool. Sabara Sella made this video. Okay, now I'm going to mute this. All right. What you can see here, I'm going to pause it. You can see on the right, now if I'm full screen this, yes, you can see it. You can see on the right, there are 2 feeders, and there are 4 nozzles picking up from those 2 feeders. And then there is this camera in the middle. You know, I'm talking about this now. I have a feeling that I've even talked about this on a previous stream. I probably have, and I've just totally forgotten it. So it's got to pick up the parts from the right on the feeders, move them past the camera, and then put them down on the destination board. And what you'll see is that it moves the nozzles across the camera location without pausing. It just moves straight to the destination. As it's moving across the camera, it is taking images in motion and then applying the correction. There you go. So you can see that right there was where it, as it moves from right to left across the camera, that's where it takes the pictures. And it does it as the gantry is in motion. Let's
System
see.
notification. 30 minutes remaining.
If, yeah, and you can see the accuracy of the positioning there. And this is it doing its live updates from the camera. Oh yeah, so here it is. Oh yeah, you can see there, it's picking up it just picked up 3 very large parts. I'm going to go back to that. It picks up 3 large parts off the tray, takes them over the camera and flies them right to left before putting them down. So it imaged the location of all of those parts, yeah, in motion. Very impressive. And there you can see the result of the alignment check. So this is the picture that it took as it was moving past the camera, and then it applies the masks and the color conversion, all of that sort of thing, and then checks the alignment. Blah, 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 blah. So this is it doing him showing the stages of the image processing. I think this is all using OpenCV. So it's got flyover cameras. Coming back to here. Yeah, I think there's another demo coming up just here. Yeah. So it's picking up from the right, flying across the camera and putting it down on the left. You can see there's a light flicker. Oh no, I don't know. Maybe it's just a reflection. I thought maybe it had turned on. Oh yeah, doing a nozzle change, so it's got a whole big bank of nozzles on the back. And then it's doing whoop, flyover of the camera. I think it is turning on illumination, but it's so fast that the camera that is being used to film this is not picking up the flash of the light. What is this? Video recommendations. The Bene Gesserit master plan. Yeah, anyway, very, very cool stuff that all of this is being done. So if you want to go to, yeah, you can be optimizing out milliseconds once you get to messing around with these machines. Or you can just buy a faster machine and not have to worry about it. Where are we? Oh, Ellen said, we'll wait a little. I'm into OpenPNP too, so no bed now. Oh, right, okay. So you were going to go, but you end up hanging around because I was talking about OpenPNP. Yeah. Oh, Wagon Load says, I still remember your video where you used a tilt switch to tell which side of the OLED is top. Yeah, that was for the light switch controller. Yeah, that was fun. So it was one of those things that was kind of silly, the whole idea. So for those of you who don't remember that, what Wagon Loads is referring to is building the very first version of the rack mount light switch controller, which had a Freetronics Ether Mega in it and breakouts to the RJ45 sockets. And I did it inside a plastic enclosure with a, what was the display? It was like a 240 by 240 OLED, I think. So it was a square OLED, and the user interface would look exactly the same if it was rotated because the display was square. And what I did was put a tilt switch in it so that if you put the, I think I used an accelerometer. So if you mounted it in the rack horizontally, the display would be oriented correctly, and if you rotated it and mounted it in a rack vertically, the display would rotate, so it would still look correct. Which is such a silly thing to do, because if you think about it, how many people mount rack mount equipment vertically? The number is vanishingly small. I must be one of the very few people that does that, or that has ever done that. And the only reason I did it is the space I was trying to fit it into was narrower than a standard rack unit. I was putting it into a cupboard that was narrow, and the way to do that was to rotate the rack 90 degrees and put the devices in vertically, because there was room to fit them. I could fit a few side by side that way. So very, very niche. And even if that is a niche application, the logical way to do that would be to have a config option in the firmware. So you tick a box that says rotate display or vertical mount or something, and then the software would rotate the display. But, oh, JaxTech says quite common in the telco field. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Vertical rack mount gear. Interesting. So the, but having it do it automatically by reading up, putting an accelerometer in the device just to deal with that very specific use case is, yeah, it was fun. Doing that was, it gave me a real sense of achievement. I don't know why, but it was just one of those things where I put it in, I updated the firmware so that it would read the accelerometer on startup and rotate the display appropriately, and it worked. And it was just one of those things where when it worked the first time, it was like, oh, that's so cool. I could rotate it, press the reset button, and the display would rotate. Scott said, I once mounted a wall rack at about 5 degrees off just to mess with a client. You bastard, Scott. Yeah. Oh, Jack Seck said, quite common in the telco field, often you have all racks mounted sideways. Yeah, interesting. PXI chassis have mostly vertical slots, says Tabraze. What is a PXI chassis? PXI.
Scott Miller said yes. Yes, I am.
Yes. PXI chassis. Oh, it's like an instrumentation chassis. Yeah, this, it looks very much like a synthesizer, like a modular synth. I really like the modular synth thing as well. I wonder if this was inspired by modular synthesizer. What's the, I can't remember the term. Modular, yeah, okay, with a Z if you insist. Modular synthesizer, Eurorack, that's it. Eurorack. Eurorack is a format of modular synthesizer invented by Dieter Doepfer, which is basically a miniaturized version of the original formats used in the 60s and 70s. Yeah, so Eurorack is these little vertical modules. I really love these. They're very primitive in some ways. It's just like front panels screwed into a thing, and behind it can be a total mess. And in fact, in front of it can be a total mess. Exhibit A. But I just like it. I just think they're cool. I like the little modular control panel nature of this. And the kind of simplicity of it. So PXI chassis reminds me very much of the Eurorack type thing. PXI chassis. So what are the mechanical specs on this? National Instruments 14 slot 3U PXI chassis. Yeah, okay. I want to learn about PXI chassis now. Thank you for sending me off on another goose chase. Jacksek says, Telco uses them by the metric ton for telecom and radio cards. Yeah, oh, Megan Load says, that's similar to the Tektronix TM506 lab racks. Oh, Tabraze said PXI, hang on a second. Coughing was required. PXI and PXIe are the new versions of the older Eurocard format chassis with DN4162 type connectors, if I recall correctly. Right, okay. Because one of the things that I don't like about Eurorack, which is both its strength and its weakness, is how undefined it is mechanically. It means that it's very easy to make a quick and dirty thing, but it's hard to make something that's nicer. Eurorack bus card connector. Yeah, so they're kind of loose and loosey-goosey. They're, ooh, that's cool. Oh, this reminds me of Sion's project with the touch matrix, where you can move your finger around it and it can draw after you. Look at this. They're LEDs illuminating slider positions, and it's a touch-based, like a touch slider. So move your finger up and down it and you can adjust the slider, and the LEDs illuminate to show the current level. That's the sort of thing that you could do with Sion's touch matrix thing. Yeah, so what ends up happening is you have a lot of Eurorack modules that are essentially a front panel and then like just loose flying leads in the back of it. So this is an internal view of a Eurorack with connectors in the back. So what typically happens is people will, oh, here's an example. What typically happens is that people will use IDC cables. So you end up with a chassis full of cables going everywhere instead of modules that properly connect, like just self-contained modules that slide into a little slot and make electrical connection and mechanical connection all in one. PXI chassis. So let's have a look at this. What is a PXI chassis? Power cooling communication bus. Yeah, come on, let's see some standards for this. VXI and PXI. What is a PXI module? VXI, yeah, okay. Where is PXI? Modular instrumentation. PCI extensions for instrumentation. Okay. PCIe. PCIe backplane. Alright. Yeah, if this defines more of the mechanical part of it so that you can make boards that plug in, because part of the whole thing with this, of course, is flexibility. And this is the thing that's really hard about defining some kind of a modular standard. You have to allow for so many different things. If you define the length, if you want a captive connector at the back of the module, that essentially dictates how deep the module can be. And that limits you because it means that module can't be deeper, but it also limits you that the module can't be smaller. So you end up with situations where, okay, so this is like a front panel. It's probably got flying leads on the back of it. If this had to conform to a certain depth, it would end up being physically very large, and most of it would just be open air. There'd be like dead space behind it. And that's partly the case because many items that go into Eurorack, like synthesizer type devices, like look at this, are control surfaces, and they don't really have very much behind them. So you would end up with modules that are physically much deeper than they really have to be. So maybe the loosey-goosey sort of approach with Eurorack is the way to go, where you just have like an IDC lead coming off the back plane, and if what you're plugging in is just a control surface, it can be very shallow. It can be a control surface with a PCB mounted behind it and an IDC connector, and you just grab the cable off the back plane, plug it in, mount your module in place, and you're done. And it doesn't matter that the inside of the chassis is mostly empty space. But it means that if you do need more of that depth, you can make use of it. Look at these. These are so cool. A multifunctional Eurorack module with little, looks like they've got little OLEDs on them. So cool. Yes. Oh, Gerald said, analog computers are making a comeback. Another great way to make spaghetti. Yeah. 19-inch.
Notification, 15 minutes remaining.
Scott said, 19-inch rack-mountable Eurorack chassis. Rackception. Exactly. Yeah, it's a rack system in a rack system. Now there was the the Unify. I know this was kind of a half-hearted attempt. What was it called? Unify. You can see the internal IP of my Unify controller there. Unify wall mount. I'm just going to search for this. Here we go. Not Dream. Here we go. Dream wall. Dream wall. Dream wall. I have no idea if these things even caught on. I saw the announcement of them a while ago and didn't... oh yeah, they're still selling them. And then, like, there was buzz around them for a while, and then nobody seems to have mentioned them since. They've just gone silent. And what you can see here is they are saying, no, you don't need a rack worth of gear. You just need this little modular thing on the wall, and it will take care of everything for you in one little dream wall. You know, that's their pitch. So this thing mounts on the wall. The idea is that the target application would be like a small office type arrangement. This is more than you would need for anything but a really big, very high-tech home, and smaller than you would need for a proper like corporate office type arrangement. But this is for the SMB sort of space where you can have this device that goes on the wall and it takes care of your routing firewall, device management, Ethernet switching, Wi-Fi management, all of that sort of thing. And I think there were modules that could go into it. My vague recollection is that it was like a kind of semi-expandable system, but I really don't recall. And blah, 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 blah. What are the... yeah, I don't remember the specs.
said my biggest gripe is cables. Ports are on top and will gather dust blare.
Yeah, they're up here. Yeah, you can see in this expanded view, across the top there is the Ethernet switch. But if you look down here, see these things coming out? I think those are power supplies. I can't remember. So it's got
Scott Miller said Unify version of an ISP supplied router.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, but on a grand scale, because most ISP supplied routers don't have 10 gig SFP plus ports, and they don't have 17 gig Ethernet ports. They don't have PoE. They don't have a 4.7-inch touchscreen.
UDM, video, access, Unify, host switch, router. Those are HDDS.
Oh, those are hard drives. Okay, yeah. So you could use this for storing video footage. Yeah, it's a Unified Dream Machine, a UDM. So it's got the different components all munged together into one box. No, the reason I brought this up, and I think my memory is wrong. The reason I brought this up was that I thought that what they had done was allowed for small modules to go into this. Like they defined their own module standard. Deployment in the box build features. But I think I'm wrong. Yeah, PSU1, PSU2. So these are power supplies. But where are we? Integrated 128 gig SSD. But I think somewhere there are slots where you can also stick in disks, so that you can use this for storing your camera footage, etc. Which I could probably figure out if I could be bothered reading the specs, but I can't because this is not what I was... Oh, what does Express do? Unify Express, Unify Dream Router, yeah. Dream Wall.
said none of their things do modules, unless I missed something lol.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think my memory is playing tricks on me. Maybe I'm remembering something else. But I vaguely recall some other mini module standard, and I know, so there's the 19-inch rack standard, and there is also a smaller rack standard. What's the smaller standard? Is it like 12-inch or something? 19-inch rack, but smaller. I'm going to, are there any, 12, if anyone makes it 10 to 12-inch rack.
Said 10 inches.
10-inch, yes. So 10-inch. I actually really like the idea of a 10-inch rack, because I think it would be, where are we? 10-inch mini server cabinets, 10-inch server rack. Because I think for home automation, it would give you, look at this, it's like a little baby size rack. I think it suits home automation better than a 19-inch rack. It's easier to fit in a cupboard or somewhere or something out of the way, and it's and you can do smaller devices, because a lot of the time you don't need the full, like a large Ethernet
Mitchell
switch or
R.
whatever.
said bigger is better. Also, harder to find stuff to fit in a 10 inches long. Also,
Yeah.
10 inches racks are harder to come by.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Jackstech and Andrew both said Jeff Geerling just did a video on a 10-inch rack. Right, I'm going to have to look that up. Is that how you spell his name? Jeff Geerling. Jeff Geerling. YouTube. Let's see. 10-inch rack. Where is it? Videos. Videos. Where is the 10-inch rack? I'm not going to play it now because I don't want to get demonetized. And also, this is not the watch John watch videos. Watch my huge rack? No. Wiring up a small office rack? No, that's 19-inch. Which one of these is the 10-inch rack? Have I just scrolled right past it without even seeing it? Oh, it may just have just been a short. Okay. Oh, Mitchell has provided a link.
Mitchell R. said link.
Yeah, okay. Here it is. I'm not going to play it now. 15 rack mount T1. Okay, I am going to check that out after the stream. Yeah. So, I don't know. There are all the reasons that a 10-inch rack is bad. Things like everything is made for 19-inch. If you buy any enterprise gear or even like SME sort of gear, it's all oriented around a 19-inch rack. And so buying a 10-inch Ethernet switch or 10-inch mountable stuff is very hard and therefore more expensive. So, yes. And also more of the space proportionally is wasted by the physical infrastructure, because you've still got the tabs on the side, you've got the rails on the side, you've got the top and bottom, etc. So the percentage of usable space within it is less than with a 19-inch rack that has the same
Miller
widths.
said Jeff noticed a lack of UPSs.
Okay, lack of UPSs. So you're proportionally almost twice as much of the space is being used by things like the side rails compared to a 19-inch rack, because you've got effectively half the space in the middle going from 19-inch to 10-inch, but you've still got the same width on the sides. Yeah, so in terms of efficiency of space, it's not so good. But I kind of just like the idea of small modules, not big 19-inch modules, which are kind of awkward. So the idea of something like Euro rack going inside 19-inch rack really interests me. Like, yeah, rackception, as I think it was Scott said earlier. Someone said earlier. Whew. Loaded it up with pies, Jack's Tech said. Yeah, of course Jeff loaded it up with pies. Pies are his thing. All right, where are we? Oh, Stephen W. said, I have a 22-inch rack in my... 22 RU
System
rack in my garage.
notification, 5 minutes remaining.
Yeah, I've got a spare rack. I've got a spare 42, I think it's 42 unit rack sitting here in my factory, taking up space, And if anybody wants a very large rack, yes, please talk to me. Ah, Mitchell, goodbye. Mitchell says, cheers guys, I'm off to the covers. Yeah. Oh, Amanda, see my comment above, it did not say it. Let's see, where is Amanda's comment? Scrolling back, scrolling back, scrolling back. What did I miss from Amanda? I can't even find it. Oh, okay, here we go. It is easier to 3D print custom rack cases for them. That's true. So 10 inches, ooh, it still wouldn't quite fit in like a typical domestic printer. So 10 inches is 254 millimeters, and the width of the bed on, say, a Prusa is about 220 millimeters. So yeah, it's close. Maybe if you printed diagonally, you could get it to fit. I don't know. 254 millimeters, not centimeters. 25.4 centimeters, yes. Yes. So, oh, Amanda says bamboo does 256 by 256. Ooh, you would just squeak it in, depending on like the tabs on the edge. Oh, level 2 Jeff, it was his second channel. Right. Oh yes, level 2 Jeff. Oh, good night, Alan. Ah, yeah. Scott says, could you just put a pair of cross rails 10 inches apart in a normal rack? Yes, you could. So you could do that. If you had some 10-inch rack mount gear that you wanted to put into a full-size rack, then yes, you can sub-rack it. That's not a problem. But it also kind of defeats the purpose of having a mini rack somewhere. Yeah. Anyway. Yes, and KHT said, can print diagonally for slightly more length. Yeah, the whole module sort of thing is an interesting squirrel, but I'm trying to resist that at the moment. I'm trying to resist more squirrels. I'm trying to deal with the squirrels I already have, because my squirrel farm / zoo is overcrowded. I have an overcrowding problem. Scott says, now find a 10-inch rack.
Scott Miller said, now find a 10 inches rack, Euro rack, and put a few vertical in a 19 inches rack. Yes,
that could be done. Yeah, but then it is kind of defeating the purpose. I think the thing would be to start with a 10-inch rack and then make things that fit the 10-inch rack.
Scott Miller said racks all the way down.
Yeah. And Wagon Load says just mount the 10-inch units vertically onto 19-inch horizontal rails. Yeah, that can be done. If you have 10-inch units that you want to fit into a 19-inch rack, then that can be done. The problem is going the other way, where you've got a 10-inch rack and you want to find things to go into it. That is more of the issue, because things generally just aren't made to fit a 10-inch rack. Why am I talking about server racks anyway? I've got no idea. How did I get onto this subject? Back undoing the stack, popping things back off the stack or rewinding. So we were talking about Euro rack, we were talking about Pixie modules. I don't know. I don't know how we got here. I don't know how we got here. Yeah, squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. Scott says, come on.
System notification, stream is over.
Yeah. And I think I've run out of steam.
Said squirrel, 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 squirrel.
Oh, here we go. Yes, Wagon Loads remembers. It's because Wagon Loads mentioned rotating OLEDs with a tilt switch, which was me talking about doing home automation related stuff. Yeah. Yes. Well, so far, this print seems to have not screwed up. Can I embiggenify this? There's a... I used to have a plugin installed in Octoprint that allowed you to go full screen on the video, but I don't have it to... yeah. At some point I did a reinstallation of Octoprint and I didn't put all the plugins back in, so it appears I do not have it. So I can't full screen the video unless I go directly to the video feed. Because this is just an embedded, like it's a stream coming off the machine and then it is being embedded as a URL inside this part of the UI, and you can just go straight to the live video stream. But so far, this print does not seem to be screwing up, which is good. Where are we up to? Layer 4. Okay, we're on layer 4 of 53. And it's taken 2 hours, 2 hours and 10 minutes so far to get through the first 4 layers. After the stream, so as soon as I wrap this up, I'm going to turn the speed up again. It's currently running at 69% speed. I'm going to turn it back up to 100% because once it's got the first few layers down, it then becomes dimensionally stable enough that it's not likely to lift any of the corners. It just needs to get to be thick enough where it's dimensionally stable and it can resist resist warpage as the additional layers go on. And by the time it's got 4 layers down, it's pretty dimensionally stable. Should be fine. So I'll turn the speed back up to 100%. 100% Utah. And because... oh yeah, KHD said there's an Octoprint plugin for full screen webcam. Yes. That's right, that's the plugin that I used to have, but I don't have it installed right now. Scott's ahead, and John probably didn't get to the post office this week either. No, I didn't. I'm sorry, Scott. I will... actually, I'm going to see if I can go down there this afternoon. I've got to find my post office box key and get down there. Because Scott posted me something ages ago, and I just haven't got to the post office box to pick it up. Wagon Loads asked, does the 3D printer have a way to post print failures to the internet or your phone? There are plugins for Octoprint that do things like string detection, but I don't have anything like that turned on. With the X1 Carbon, which you can fully control from your phone, yes, it does have like error notifications and stuff. Andrew Brown says, use mail today. Yeah, that's where you get a notification when you've received something in your PO box. No, the thing, I know there is stuff in the PO box. It's just getting down there. So the PO box is right near my old house where I used to live and do not anymore, sadly. And so it's actually like a couple of 100 meters from my former house where the rest of my family still lives. And so I've got to go down there to check the PO box. Which means finding the PO box key, which may be at... there should be one at my former house. So I might go there this afternoon to get the key and go to the PO box. But if the PO box is full, the extra stuff will be in storage in the back of the post office. Alexa, stop. I was not asking a question.
System notification.
All right.
Here is hangry. 5 minutes ago.
I am randomly rambling now. I'm going to go... and because I said randomly rambling, it's time for listener mail. And I'm going to go and...
Scott Miller said time to see about getting your P.O. box moved.
Yeah, I could move it to the local post office, because the Bayswater post office is a few hundred metres from where I am now. I walk there to take packages to send out. So I could just switch to a P.O. box there. But I've had a P.O. box at Croydon South Post Office for years and years and years. Stuff would continue going there even if I cancelled that P.O. box. Say hi to your fams for me, says Crispian. And Andrew says, sounds like a job for your son on the way to work. Yes, that's true. I should just give him the key and let him check it every now and then. That would be the smart solution. Outsource it. The problem is I'm no good at outsourcing. I am deliberately trying to force myself to not do things myself and allow other people to do things, or to give other people tasks. But yeah, I have a lot of trouble doing it. So whenever something needs to be done, my inclination is I will do it. I don't want to ask anybody else to do something that I could do myself. I need to get over that. Yeah. Okay, so I am going to go now-ish. Now-ish. Yeah, I think I'm going to go now-ish. How do I end a stream? I don't know. Let's end it on a happy note, which is, I hope you all have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you all really soon. Where's that end button? Right there. Okay, bye!